Welcome back to Cinema Bucket List, the show where we make our way through the 1001 movies you must see before you die, a growing list of 1,245 must-watch films for all cinephiles. As always, I am Mike, and I have returned with 11 more films from the list. I may make a lot of enemies with this one. I don't care for this film. I know a lot of people say this is when Scorsese started to find his stride, but in my opinion it's a jumbled, boring mess. Sure, it's got good performances from Harvey Keitel and Robert De Niro, but unlike his later films with similar themes, it does little to nothing to make the audience care about what is happening. The gritty depiction of 1970s New York and the schmoozing characters that fill its streets is not enough for me. I will admit the ending is strong, but by the time it rolls around, it's too little too late. I'm sure many of you will keep it on your list, but for me, I'd rather see Scorsese's The King of Comedy, which is not on the official list. And that's a shame. It's a significantly better film.
I'll tell you something else, Mikey. I fuck you right where you breathe, because I don't give two shits about you or nobody else.
I gotta be honest. The first 10 or so minutes of this were rough for me. One thing you should know about me is I tend to dislike films where the entire plot is driven by people overreacting to something. In this film's case, the guilty party are the protagonist Maria, played by the late Adrienne Shelly, and her parents. The entire opening scene is just her overreacting to her parents overreacting. And to add to that frustration on my part, I didn't know it was a comedy going in. I thought this was just someone's attempt at ripping off the Brat Pack. But in my mind, what Hal Hartley delivers is the antithesis of the Brat Pack. It's dark and funny and irreverent in its depiction of angsty youth. Adrienne Shelly and Martin Donovan have palpable chemistry, and their dry, unironic delivery of Hal Hartley's dialogue makes for an unexpected, entertaining film. It stays on the list for me.
Good. I trust you. Now it's your turn.
What?
Going up.
I'm twice your size. If I fall on you from that height, I'll kill you.
Chaos. Absolute chaos. With Duck Soup, the Marx Brothers deliver one of, if not the best comedy to come out of the 1930s. This family of vaudevillian performers had honed their craft of a combination of physical and absurdist humor so well that it feels almost like a science to watch them perform. Their irreverent style is seemingly timeless and is as fresh today as it was in 1933. While being a surrealist satire, this film was slightly controversial in its day. Groucho's depiction of a dictator was somehow thought to be a personal attack on Benito Mussolini, so the Italian fascist banned it outright, much to Marx's pleasure. It's a hilarious film that unequivocally deserves its spot on this list.
I think we should have a standing army.
Why should we have a standing army?
Because then we save money on chairs.
Peanuts.
This film left me with a lot of questions. Like, why isn't this kid wearing any clothes? Where are his clothes? How does he not get constantly sunburned? Is it sunburned or sunburnt? Why is Jason Mantzoukas riding around the desert with a naked kid? Seriously, why is he naked? This film is all over the place. There are parts of it I loved and parts of it that I loathed. It's hard not to view this film as an ego project as writer, director, and star of the film, Alejandro Jodorowsky, makes himself a badass, gritty sharpshooter who at one point becomes a Christ-like figure. It's a film that thinks it says so much without saying much at all, but in fact it's the opposite. If this had ended an hour and a half in after he defeated the Four Masters, I would say that this is a good film. But it continues for another 50 minutes after that, filled with nonsense, hoping to be disguised as abstract art. I'd remove this from the list and replace it with Logan. The two films don't really have anything in common other than Western themes, and I don't even care for superhero films, but Logan is more focused and overall a better film. If you like El Topo beyond the first 70 minutes, please tell me why. I mean seriously, why was the kid naked?
Triunfador. Tienes que ganar. No seas tan honesto. No pelees de igual a igual. Inventa algo. Haz una trampa. Siempre se puede triunfar.
Looks like we got another twofer on our hands. This is a pair of sister documentaries directed by Nick Broomfield about infamous serial killer Eileen Wuornos. I'm honestly not even sure why these two documentaries are on here. I mean, they're okay, but there's nothing in them that stands out as unique or beyond par. They're extremely okay. except in the case of director Nick Broomfield's voiceovers. He sounds like an alien trying to impersonate a human.
Politicians and the Christian right campaigned for Eileen Wuornos' execution.
The first of the two, the selling of a serial killer, does have the interesting angle of everyone trying to sell the rights to the story after the Son of Sam law was repealed, but it doesn't do enough to dissect that truth. On top of that, and this is an issue I take with most films, books, and articles about Eileen Wuornos, is that she is the only serial killer that is constantly defended because of her past abuse. But literally every single serial killer in history has been abused. That's kind of how they become apathetic enough to become serial killers. And I don't believe for a second that each killing was done in self-defense. In just 30 seconds of interview with her, you can tell that she is a disturbed woman who is as guilty of her crimes as Ted Bundy is of his.
May your wife and kids get raped.
I would ask that you would
Right
point
in
the
the
public defender's
ass.
office.
I personally would remove these from the list. If you want good movies about serial killers, I'd add Monster, which is about Eileen Wuornos, starring Charlize Theron, as well as Zodiac, which is about the Zodiac killer, directed by David Fincher.
Nonetheless,
Yeah.
you killed 7 men.
Yes, you
And I'm
did.
asking you, what got you to kill the 7
And
men?
I'm telling you because the cops let me keep killing them, Nick. Don't
But
you
not,
get it?
Not everybody is killing 7 people.
This is a film that the behind-the-scenes story is more interesting than the movie itself. Essentially, after a poor box office performance, the studio swooped in and did what studios do best. They recut it and butchered it to the point where it's barely the same movie anymore. Luckily, it was restored as close to its former glory as it could be, given the director Max Ophuls' death. But in my opinion, it is still an incredibly dull film. I also don't care much for romance in films, so this may just be out of my element. This film is so dull that I don't really have too much to say about it, so I'd skip it. Instead, I would add On the Silver Globe by Andrzej Zulawski. Not only is the behind-the-scenes story more interesting, with the Polish government shutting it down, but the restoration is still in progress, not to mention the beautiful imagery and fascinating plot. I would add this to my list over The Sins of Lola Montès.
Posez des questions, messieurs, dames. Lola Montès vous répondra aux questions les plus choquantes.
What can I say about a film where the entire plot is literally watching a woman grow through her daily routine over the course of 200 minutes? Yet it is somehow still more interesting than Lola Montès. It's an interesting experiment from director Chantal Ann Ackerman. It's not for everyone, but I do think it is worth watching for that reason alone. It's an intriguing character study with zero fluff. I didn't love it, but it's still one that you should watch just to say you did. Who knows, you might love it. This is another film that has been removed from the publication of later editions, simply because there are better films. A rom-com from 1932, Me and Your Gal is enjoyable but dated. Many of the jokes land with no context of the time, but some don't. There isn't anything truly spectacular about it in my opinion. Spencer Tracy and Joan Bennett have an undeniable chemistry, and Raoul Walsh's direction is good. It's a solid film, but is it worthy of our sacred list? No, I'd replace it with Lost in America, directed by Albert Brooks. They don't have much in common besides being comedies with romantic tones, sure, but Brooks' 1985 classic is much more deserving.
I bet with an old man like that you can't fool around like most girls do, can you? I bet you don't even take a drink, do you?
Only when I have a cold. Hope you didn't get a whiff of my breath at Kate's wedding.
Before watching this one, I didn't know what to expect from it. The title made me think of other Paul Newman films such as The Sting, and the poster gave me Bullet vibes. But what I got was a beautiful story about prisoners bonding together over the toughest time in their lives. Through the hard labor forced on them by their prison sentences, these men do their best to live life to the fullest. Of course, prison isn't easy, but the contrast between the highest of highs and the lowest of lows makes for an emotional journey. Paul Newman continues to show that he is one of the best actors to have ever lived, and George Kennedy shines in this role that earned him an Oscar. This film absolutely stays on.
Sorry, Luke. I'm just doing my job. You gotta appreciate that.
Nah. Calling it your job don't make it right, boss.
To date, this was the hardest film for me to find. It's not streaming and you can't rent it. I could only find it on an archive website, hence the TCM logo and the French subtitles. Because of this, I was fully expecting an outdated, subpar film. Instead, this was truly a masterpiece by King Vidor. With breathtaking cinematography and a shockingly relatable story, it is clear that Vidor was pushing boundaries in the early days of Hollywood. The chemistry between Eleanor Boardman and James Murray was palpable, and the film transitions seamlessly between romantic comedy and domestic drama. It's a beautiful film, and I hope that one day it is more widely available. I'm keeping it on the list. And that does it for episode 2 of the Cinema Bucket List. Have you started working through it? How many have you seen? What did you think of the films featured in this video? Comment down below to share your thoughts, and if you feel like it, like and subscribe. As always, I am Mike, and I will be back next month with at least 10 more films from the 1001 movies you must see before you die. See you then.